My name is Dan Dorval, and I'm President and CEO of Dorval and Cherney Financial Advisors. I am an independent certified financial planner and author of my book, Financial Success for the Rest of Us, Reality-Based Financial Planning for Mainstream America.
Hi, my name is Leah Woodley. I'm an associate financial advisor with Dorval and Cherney Financial Advisors. Our conversations discuss what it means to do quality of life planning in all areas of your life. Dan, we see a lot of different types of couples who come in, and how they manage their money tends to vary as well. Sometimes that can create conflicts, and sometimes they manage their money a certain way just to be proactive in avoiding conflicts. Tell me about some of the situations that stand out to you most when it comes to marriage and money.
Well, it's one of these things where a lot of people don't talk about money. So, you're in a couple, you're thinking about getting married, you probably have talked about all sorts of things in your life, but maybe not money. Or, maybe your friends or family aren't going to talk about how they successfully handled money. So, one of the biggest things, and I do talk about this in my book, is merging finances. And what does that mean? So, everybody is different. Everybody's got different thoughts and ideas on this. And men and women tend to be very different in regard to how they view money. So, in order to try to avoid conflict, one of the things that we talk a lot about is, the first decision is, am I going to merge my finances, or are we going to stay separate in some way, shape, or form? Now, for second marriages, later in life marriages, a lot of people have been through, maybe a divorce because money was a big contributing factor. And they might be very strong towards, hey, we just want to run our finances separate. And if that's the case, that's fine. But for a lot of younger couples, and they're now getting married for the first time, they're merging finances with somebody for the first time, in general, I tend to say you should merge finances. You should not be doing separate finances in general. Okay. And the biggest thing is, as we describe this, you have like this one joint pot of money where whatever income streams are coming in. So if there's a one earner household, a two earner household, whether one makes a lot more than the other or whatever, it doesn't matter. They all come into this one pot at the top. Okay. Now what happens is all of the common bills, so this might be housing and in groceries and, different types of maybe certain bills that happen all the time, utilities and cell phones and whatever. Those things just come out of that joint account. And those are non-discretionary expenditures. They're going to happen every month, and we can predict them pretty closely. Like they might vary a little bit, but they're pretty close. Okay. So now, obviously, the non-discretionary expenditures have to fit within your means. Okay, so that's the first thing. That has to happen because those are non-discretionary. Now we get into the discretionary, and this is where people run into all of their problems. So this is the entertainment, travel. These are the things where we express our personal values and motivations in all the time. Okay, so you might have one of the couple as a spender, one of the couples as a saver. They might both be savers, they might both be spenders. If they're both spenders, we might have a big problem, right? So what I tend to talk about is, if you are having challenges with your discretionary expenditures, okay, I normally say, okay, we have this joint account. We pay all of our joint bills from that account, but we also may have our own individual account. And this is specifically for these discretionary expenditures. And the reason why is, a married couple, they still have their own personal values and priorities. So, in order to express those without a potential argument or problem, I now move money into these separate accounts. Now, these separate accounts, this is not meant to be an allowance. This is not meant to be restrictive. This is meant to be an abundance mentality. So you want whatever number you transfer over, this should be enough for you to realistically do the things that matter to you, obviously within the context of your means. Okay. So, to give you an example, when my wife and I first got married, which was a very long time ago, okay, I asked her, how much do you need personally to do all the things you want to do? If you want to go out with your friends, if you have a hobby, if whatever, what's the amount that you would need? We were coming out of our college poverty years.
Okay.
So usually coming out of college poverty years, people don't spend a ton on
Mhm.
discretionary expenditures. Now, in her case, she said, "Oh, I probably could get by personally on like $100 a month." And I'm like, okay, this is college poverty years talking. Like, you're making good money, you can spend more than that. And she goes, I couldn't imagine spending more than $200 a month. And I go, okay, I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to transfer $500 a month into each of our accounts because there was no way she's going to be able to spend $500. So this is an abundance mentality. The
Okay.
idea is she's not going to spend it all. Okay. But we have allocated that money for discretionary type things that matter to us. Okay. Now, the reason I budgeted so much in there was, first off, we could afford it. We had no kids at the time, we had two incomes. But second, I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to grow those discretionary accounts for both of us because we had a really strong interest in traveling.
Mm.
I grew up in Western North Dakota. I had never been anywhere in my life. I really wanted to see some things. So we literally sat down one time. I had her make a list of 10 places she'd really want to go in the world. I made a list of 10 places I really wanted to go in the world. We read off those lists and took the top five that were common and said, we are going to do those things. And the way we did that is we built up our discretionary accounts. And when we had enough to do the things, we just started knocking off those five places that we really wanted to go to. So you build the money first, then you do the things. And so we could still spend personally. If you want to stop and get a coffee, I'm not going to argue with that. That's your wish to do that. I may not do that, and that's okay. So this discretionary expenditure, what it does is it fixes that number. Now you
Mm.
can actually look at your budget for the month and go, I don't know what I'm going to spend on fishing this month, but I know that my whole expenses are fixed. Now I have leftover, hopefully, at least we should. And if I have leftover, now I can direct that towards other goals and priorities for financial planning, like retirement, or maybe it's saving for a house, or it's accumulating for some common goal. But we have fixed our discretionary expenditures. And where most people run into a problem is they never do that. So they live up to and sometimes beyond what they make. And for many couples, it's actually a competition. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, you just spent money on this? Well, I'm going to spend money on this. You spent $100, I'm going to spend $150. And now it's almost a competition to see who can spend the money the fastest. And that is one of the worst ways to ever manage marital finances.
Wow, that was so insightful. I do wonder, when you went down to just one income when you were establishing this business and starting out in your earlier years, did that change anything with how you were managing, or did you continue to function as you just described?
So that was the beauty of the whole process for us, was this idea that we had a goal when we eventually were going to have children. My wife wanted to stay home with the kids. So we knew we were going to be operating on one income. And yet at the same time, I grew up in a family where my dad made more money than my mom. And this would be like a very traditional concept from that age group.
Mhm.
That was his money.
Mhm.
Mom didn't hardly have any money. Like, if she wanted to go spend money, it was like, no, you don't make enough money to go do that, but I can go spend whatever I want because I'm
Mhm.
making most of the money. And I looked at that and said, that is a really bad way of doing things. Okay.
Mhm.
So in this whole concept, if you think about this top joint account and there's two incomes coming in, the only thing that changed for us when she stopped working was one of those incomes went away.
Mhm.
As long as we still had enough income to basically justify everything else, nothing else changed. I still got $500 a month. She still got $500 a month. That still for us was building. We could still travel. We had dedicated that money. Now, what we didn't have was nearly as much money for savings. So I actually put retirement like goals on hold for a period of time because we had done a good job up front. Now, I could put that on hold for a while. And this is this normal flow through life where sometimes you save more, sometimes you save less, all based on your defining goals and priorities.
That's so good. I do have a question about, you were saying your father, he made the bulk of the money and there was like, this is my money. So I actually encountered that recently with a younger couple, and they didn't even actually know how much each other made. The first time they were hearing it was when we were meeting together. So talk about that. Do you think transparency is important in marriage, or do you think that's something that just should be up to the couple? And I mean, obviously it's up to the couple, but do you think that's more of a quality of life issue, whether they want to be transparent with one another or not? How do you think that should be approached?
Yeah, that's a probably a deeper question than
Mm.
financial planning, right? I
Yeah.
mean, now you're getting into almost a therapy type of question because what happens, I think, with a lot of young couples today, so we're talking about like Gen Z couples or certainly, maybe the youngish millennial couples. Um, I think they try to avoid conflict as much as they possibly
Mhm.
can. So any awkward or uncomfortable topic, which might include money, they just don't want to talk about.
Mm, mhm,
And so this idea of transparency, a lot of people go through life, and their concept is ignorance is bliss,
mm.
and they just don't want to know. And I will tell you from a lot of experience that a whole bunch of the people we help a whole bunch of nurses. And many of those nurses, they made good money, but they left all of their finances up to their spouse. And they had no clue what was going on. And the spouse would just go, "Oh, we're good. You're okay. Don't worry about it. I got this covered." And then they go through a death, a disability, a divorce, one of these life changes that really hurts them. And they realize their finances were not so good. And those people will tell me all the time, "I wish I had known more about our situation, but I was
Yeah.
trying to avoid any conflict. I was trying to avoid an argument." So I would strongly encourage anybody who has a close enough relationship that they're thinking about getting married, okay?
Yeah.
I would strongly encourage them to have very transparent discussions about their money values and beliefs. A lot of what we come from for our money values is how we grew up.
Yes.
We saw parents, maybe we maybe experienced having a lot, or maybe we experienced having very little, and that influences how we think about spending, savings, our values. And it's really important to understand that in a spouse.
I completely agree. I think it is important to have those conversations about, what was your upbringing like when it came to money, because as you said, it does kind of define how we operate. I know for some people, they may do, and this was the case for you, you did something completely different than what you witnessed growing up. And then some other people do exactly what they witnessed growing up. But if you have that context of why this is happening, where this is coming from, and you can share that with your spouse, that helps to, one, open up discussion and helps you to kind of create a path together of how you want to do things and how you want to manage things. And I think it's important to have these conversations before any issues come up so that you're kind of on the same page.
Well, life is not always easy, right? I mean, we all go through our basically our storms, and we have to try to navigate that as best we can. So my piece of advice to everyone is do the very best you can to remove money as one of those storms. Like, you're going to have your challenges no matter what. If we can reduce any sort of conflict associated with money, and that's typically through transparency, through planning, through understanding what's going on. If you can reduce money as a stressor within your life, that dramatically improves the quality of life for a couple.
Absolutely. One other thing I want to bring up is, say you have a couple who is nearing retirement and one spouse is kind of in a better position than the other, and they are operating their finances separately. What would you say to that person who is not in the best situation for retirement? Is it like keep working? Is it what is your advice for them?
Yeah, that's a great question because for us, we see that a lot.
We
A lot
do.
of the people we help, the nurse that we help has a pension, and her pension plus her social security, a lot of times just those two resources alone are enough to put her in a pretty good position to replace the income she's used to making through work. So she can transition from work into retirement without really feeling like she's losing a paycheck.
Mhm.
Her spouse, in many cases, who may even have way more money in a retirement account, doesn't have that pension in most cases. And all they have is Social Security as their only guaranteed income source. So they have to rely heavily on their investments. And they think they have way more money.
Mhm.
They don't have more income.
Mhm.
So we often have to talk to them about, again, it's like this time, horizon or this cycle
Mhm.
where, okay, like if we retire here, maybe I need to provide more of the burden, so to speak, for a period of time. And then maybe things shift out here. And then all of a sudden the other person's providing a little bit more. And those are just conversations that have to happen. So for some of the people
Yes.
we help, they look at it and they say, hey, yeah, we're kind of running our finances separate. But if we're going to be retired and we're going to be traveling and I have more means than my spouse, I'm going to take on more of that, type of thing. And again, if they have that joint account concept where they can bring money into the joint account, it doesn't matter that one of those incomes is bigger than the other one as long
Mhm.
as you're operating together. So, again, transparency, conversation. But I will tell you that somebody who's been through a trauma in a marriage as related to money is
Mhm.
going to have some major trust issues in the next marriage. And you have to understand they've been through a trauma like that. They may not be open to having those conversations and they may not be open to sharing resources because they've suffered through it.
Yeah, and that may be where counseling does need to get involved.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was a great conversation. I hope it helps someone. If you enjoyed this conversation, I do encourage you to subscribe to our channel and be on the lookout for more candid conversations like this. Until next time, have a good one.
Thanks, Leah.
Thank you.